Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Sohee Yang, a political activist and a civic hacker, actively working both in South Korea and around the globe. And I'm truly honored to be your moderator for today's session, Gender Equality and Democracy for Future Generation. And before we begin, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to all of our distinguished participants and our esteemed panelists who join us from various corners of the globe, representing Sweden, International IDEA, Romania, and youth leadership through the Latitude Lead Africa. Today, we gather for a pivotal session on gender equality and democracy for future generations. This session is co-led by International IDEA, along with the esteemed collaboration of Sweden and Romania. Our aim is to devolve into synergetic intersection of gender equality and the safeguarding of the democracy for future generations. During our session, we will feature an overview of the gender cohort recommendations on the gender equality as a foundational pillars for democracy and share experiences on the implementation of some of these vital recommendations and amplify opportunities to sustain and advance them through our collective efforts and initiatives. So let me introduce our panelists who will guide us through today's discussion. So from Sweden, we have Mrs. Irina Nioni, Ambassador for Human Rights, Democracy and the Rule of the Law. Thank you. So she will provide a synopsis of the gender cohort recommendations and discuss the centrality on women's economic empowerment and democracy for future generations. And next representing International IDEA, Mrs. Lumbijay Kandawasvika Nundu, Principal Advisor, Democracy and Inclusion. Have a seat here. So she will explore promoting gender equality and democracy by tackling gender norms, stereotypes, and socio-cultural practices. And next from Romania, Mrs. Maria Caterina, Deputy Director, Undersecretary of the State, Romania National Cybersecurity Directorate, joined here. So she will discuss women in cybersecurity and technology and facilitate gender-based violence. And last but not least, Mr. God bless Manuel Otburu, a global president and founder of the Latitude Lead Africa, joined here. So he will speak on young men as an agent of all the gender equality. So now, let's dive into our discussion and learn more from our panelists with their experiences and insight for the following focus question for each panelist. So my first question goes to Ms. Irina Nioni. So could you share the key highlights of the gender cohort recommendations and elaborate on why the centrality of women's economic empowerment is crucial in democracy for future generations?
Okay, thank you so much. Good morning to all. It's very nice to be here. Let me share with you a few words on the work that has been going on since last. So during the Summit for Democracies Year of Action, in the gender cohort that is led and co-led by Sweden, Romania, International IDEA, and Georgetown Institute for Women, Peace and Security, have explored how gender equality and democracy are intertwined. So this was primarily done by conducting wide consultations with over 100 stakeholders from all around the world. And these included representatives of government, of civil society, philanthropic organizations, as well as companies. So we received a great number of comments and suggestions covering all the issues that constitute the bridge between gender equality and democracy. So from discrimination and economic empowerment to emerging challenges, such as technology-facilitated gender-based violence and the importance of women's political representation in post-conflict societies. So this input laid the foundation for the recommendations that the co-leads presented at the second Summit for Democracy. So these recommendations focuses on 3 pillars. 1, inclusion, 2, legislative and policy frameworks, and 3, conflict prevention, peace and security. So each of these constitute a fundamental aspect of women's and girls' participation in democracy processes. So in short, these recommendations provide a roadmap for how different stakeholders, be it a small CSO in Asia, a company in South America, or a government in Europe, can contribute to the strengthening of gender equality as it relates to democracy. So the universality of these recommendations was indeed a central part of our findings. So contrary to what is sometimes claimed, neither gender equality nor democracy are inherent Western phenomena. The equal value of every individual, regardless of sex, gender identity or expression, ethnicity, religion, disability, sexual orientation, age, or other status, is ultimately a matter of freedom. So what about what Sweden has done? So I would like to focus on Sweden's future work and priorities based on these recommendations. So the gender cohort recommendation to foster conditions that promote women's political empowerment, leadership, and representation in decision-making calls specifically for action strengthening women's economic empowerment. So in this context, Sweden's own history is quite a good illustration, as our country is often portrayed as a beacon of gender equality. So this has not happened by itself. It is largely the result of political will, together with hard work from a strong and courageous civil society. The commitment of men and boys have also been instrumental. So while these efforts have been crucial in shaping Swedish society, it is often policies providing economic empowerment, such as access to affordable childcare and individual taxation, that has really paved the way for greater inclusion and participation of women and girls. So this is still work in progress, as no nation is truly gender equal. This is why the gender cohort's recommendations calling on measures to strengthen women's economic empowerment is so important. So let me just briefly mention a few initiatives that Sweden is currently working on in this area. So nationally, the Swedish government is focusing on the correlation between economic empowerment and the gender-based violence. When individuals are economically reliant on abusive partners or an abusive family, finances become a tool for manipulation and control, that we all know. But this limits also the individual freedom of women, which in the long run also constitute a democratic challenge. So internationally, the recommendation has been an inspiration when the Swedish government only recently adopted a new strategy for the long-term goal of our development cooperation. So while gender equality is mainstreamed throughout this strategy, women's economic empowerment is singled out as a specific priority. So this is then, as I mentioned, because women's economic empowerment is not only a goal in itself, but enabling freedom for the individual and as a tool to enable sustainable democratic societies and a better future for everyone. So in this vein, let me just conclude by repeating what our Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Tobias Billström, said in his speech at the side event when the cohort's recommendations were launched last year. Through investment in issues such as women's land ownership and entrepreneurship, greater integration with international trade, specific efforts to close the digital gap, and a strong focus on localization, we take the recommendations forward by strengthening both individual women, our societies, and our democracies. So the connection between gender equality and democracy is clear. Countries where women and girls' enjoyment of human rights are secured tend to be strong democracies. Conversely, democratic countries also tend to be more gender equal. Simply put, empowering women and safeguarding democracy go hand in hand. The two cannot be separated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Serena. So from your speech, I see the strong link between the women empowerment and economics and the democracy, and like not only like setting as a like specific priority for the goal itself, but also like strongly linked for the freedom and democracy for our future and for all. Yeah, thank you. So my next question goes to Ms. Rumbitjai Kandawasvikanandu. So yeah. So tackling gender norms, stereotypes, and social cultural practices and behavior requires a sustained advocacy, campaigns tailored for women and girls and boys and men. So what are the practical initiatives that International IDEA is spearheading as a follow-up to some of the gender cohort recommendations?
Thank you. Because I'm going to talk about a controversial issue on social norms, gender roles and practices, I will have to stand up because I use my hands. So I'm not as calm as Irina, who can be holding the mic and then speaking. So I need, my body to be engaged as well. And sometimes we are told that we are emotional. And I always say gender equality is an emotional issue because it's personal, because it's about the persons. It's about living in the world and having equal opportunities and rights. So I need to engage the entire being of me. And I hope you join me as well. Because what Irina has pointed out in regards to the recommendations that came out from the gender cohort underpins the issues that we are grappling with. How are we going to have gender equality in democracy for future generations if we don't address harmful social norms? If we don't address rigid gender roles and perceptions and practices and behaviors that shape how people behave and relate with each other. And those are formed through the processes of socialization. And we might say, and I can argue, especially having an African background, that it's our culture, it's our tradition, that's how we're brought up. But these issues are very permeating in societies, not only in Africa, but across the world. And that's one of the fundamental issues that came up from the key recommendations of the gender cohort. The impact of harmful social norms, perceptions, practices, stereotypes, and behaviors, and ultimately how they affect gender equality, women's empowerment, and ultimately safeguarding gender equality in democracy for future generations. So I'm going to take you on a journey of challenging you in light of this recommendation to address these social norms. And as International IDEA, the work that we are doing, building on the efforts that came through the work under the gender cohort. One of the areas that we are placing emphasis on, and I think we need to, all of us, is to challenge the extent to which social norms, practices, and behaviors intersect with democratic processes, be it in relation to elections. We are talking about 2024, being a super elections year. At least 50 countries going for elections in 2024. And if we are very thoughtful and give particular attention to the extent to which these elections will transform gender inequalities and come up with participation and representation that mirrors the makeup or the composition of populations, we might come to a conclusion where we need also to start questioning the quality or the state of our democracies. Because participation is one thing, and we're seeing a lot of young people, we're seeing women in all their diversity participating, but is that participation translating into voice and influence? And this is one of the questions we need to pose to ourselves. Why is it that the participation, what I will call the politics of presence, the physical participation, is not translating into voice and influence? And in order to do that, I think it's important for us to understand that there are issues to get to gender equality in democracy for future generations in a practical way. We need to have an intersectional approach or perspective. It connects with some of the elements that Irina pointed out, for instance, the issue about women's economic empowerment, that the extent to which it then allows women to be able to fund or even consider themselves as candidates for positions, for elective positions of power and decision-making. And when I'm saying women, I mean women in all their diversity, including young women as well. And mind you, it's not a zero-sum game that we are saying young men and men should not be engaged. But we need to realize that we need gender-targeted measures, women's empowerment measures, because if society was gender fair, we wouldn't be seeing these inequalities. And the bottom line is that these inequalities that are driven or perpetuated and entrenched by negative social cultural norms, rigid gender roles and norms, because of the double or triple gender roles and responsibilities for women, it's a factor, it's an issue in terms of whether they can even consider themselves to be in positions of power and decision-making because of the societal expectations and responsibilities that women have to bear throughout their life. In this regard, I would really want to share with you the conceptual approach that we are, I don't want to use the word pushing, but the conceptual approach that we are rolling out and encouraging different stakeholders to go along with us on that journey as international idea to build on the outcome, the recommendations of the gender cohort. It's a conceptual approach on access, participation and representation, transformative or transformational. And in terms of access, we are putting forward analysis and research and dialogues and engagement on the extent to which harmful social cultural norms, rigid gender roles and norms intersect with women's ability to access. And access is that like entry point, to have the door open so that you can come into democratic processes and ultimately into positions of power and decision-making. Why? Because leadership, political leadership and decision-making, inclusive political leadership and decision-making, is a fundamental pillar for democracy. So the pillar of access, under the conceptual framework, we look at issues such as informal rules, regulations, and also the systemic and entrenched processes, whether they happen in relation to electoral processes, to constitution building processes. And then in terms of participation and representation, we are also looking at that intersectionality of the social norms and saying, how do social norms, gender roles and responsibilities affect the ability for women in all their diversity to participate in terms of now translating their presence in those spaces into voice and influence. For instance, we are seeing a lot of increased technology-facilitated gender-based violence and the broad things that are happening around violence against women in politics. Is that not a manifestation, a clear manifestation of the social norms and perceptions that women should not be in these spaces? Therefore, we can say technology has increased, maybe it has just amplified the underlying factors, because what technology is doing now is providing the perpetrators with platforms where they can be hidden somehow or invisible, but they are simply emitting or reflecting the social norms, perceptions, and stereotypes that are so entrenched in our societies across the world. And the reason is that to have gender equality in democracy for future generations It's about the redistribution of power and privileges. And that's why we see a lot of the pushback in the name of it's our social norms, it's our culture, it's our practices, it's our traditions. It's a pushback against the redistribution of power and privileges for both women and men, boys and girls in their diversity to be able to participate. So when we are seeing also the intersectionality of social norms with regards to the pillar of transformational and transformative changes, this is what sits in very well with the extent to which all the interventions that we are having, whether it connects to women's economic empowerment, measures for such as gender quotas, legislated gender quotas in some countries, or even voluntary party quotas in some countries, like in Sweden, it's voluntary party quotas. When do we actually see the redistribution and changes in unequal gender power relations? That's where the transformation is needed. Why am I emphasizing that? The point is that in many countries, there is evidence that now women are still seen as political liabilities. When political parties are coming forward with their campaigns, putting forward women candidates, they are seen as political liabilities. What drives that state of affair? It goes back to the norms, perceptions, attitudes, and beliefs and practices. Why is it that when we are talking about numbers, just the numbers, why is it that only 6% of the countries of the world, in that 6% Sweden is included, only 6% of the countries in the world have reached 50% representation of women in parliaments? Why is it like that? If we know the world is almost 50-50 in terms of the demographic profile. But I want to break it further and challenge ourselves that now when you even look at consider the youth representation of youth across the world, they are not more than 2%. But let's look at the demographic profiles of countries. We can entrust youth with the ability to vote in terms of electing and deciding who should lead them. But in many countries, because of also perceptions and attitudes and stereotypes towards young people, we can't entrust them to lead. And yet we are saying we need democracy for future generations. How do we get there? If we have all this gamut of issues that we are not willing to challenge ourselves and see the extent to which the entrenched, the learned social norms, practices, and perceptions are barriers for achieving gender equality in democracy for future generations. I would like to conclude by a key factor, and this relates to engaging men and boys in advocating for gender equality in democracy and gender equality in democracy for future generations. And in that regard, as International IDEA, we realize that the messaging around engaging men and boys in all their diversity, it should not be about men and boys understanding the importance for gender equality and its benefits to women in all their diversity. But it's also about men and boys realizing and understanding the costs and the loss that men and boys encounter because of the perpetuating gender inequalities. So it's not just meant to be advocates because it benefits women, but it's also for men to realize that when there is no gender equality starting within the home and going into the different spheres of society, men are also being disadvantaged and affected by the harmful social norms and stereotypes. And ultimately, all this does is to undermine democracy. Whether we are talking now about the role of ICT in undermining democracy and the pushback and the forces, if we look at that as well, there are gender dimensions in that regard, and it is something that is very fundamental for all of us to pursue if indeed we're gonna push forward for issues and the theme on gender equality in democracy for future generations. Thank you for your attention. I'll stop here.
Yeah, thanks, Ms. Rumpichai. I strongly agree that challenges to rigid the gender roles and perception is like the means that is redistribution of the power, and it ultimately affects today like the progress for the democracy. And I also want to mention that your choice to show the strong gesture has worked, definitely worked, to amplify your voice. Yeah, thank you. So my next question goes to Mrs. Maria Manula Katrina. So for the woman in cybersecurity and technology facilitated gender-based violence, this is like increasingly becoming an unprecedented global challenge. So I wonder, how is Luminia spearheading the practical initiatives and interventions to confront this challenge as a follow-up to the gender cohort recommendation, like to address the life relation of the technology facilitated gender-based violence and abuse?
Thank you. Everyone stand up, but I keep the mic here. So, but I still use my hands. Maybe this is why I hold to the mic. But thanks for the question, and I was really inspired of the speech before me. So maybe I'm not sticking to the lines because I can't. But I would rather start saying that cybersecurity and women in cybersecurity is not such a contradictory subject. And I always say in the last years, for me, speaking about women, it's something that I'm passionate about. Cybersecurity is my job. I'm passionate about too, but I will never say no to any subject that has some women in that. And I think it's a lesson that I learned, that we have to speak out and say what we believe. But getting back to, we need more women in cyber. Sure, we need more people in cyber. I think young and old and coming from different areas. I will start a little bit about the relation between cybersecurity and democracy. First of all, democracy needs people that are loving it. We forgot to love democracy. This is why I love to see so many ladies in the room, because we are emotional. Democracy needs values and needs soul. And cybersecurity helps us, and technology helps us to deliver these values, but it's up to us humans to bring it there and to fight for what we believe. No matter, the values may be different in some countries and in others, but we still believe in equality, we still believe in freedom, we still believe in freedom of speech and rights, and so many things that brings us together. Maybe the flavor can be different in other countries, but we are united in these beliefs. So we also want an inclusive digital space. That means that digital platforms are there to let us express our differences and our things that brings us together. And I think one of the main points in this is we have to fight to equal access to technology, not only for girls, but also for boys. But they shouldn't be only the people in the cities. They also, somebody in the remote village, in, I would say, remote Romania, so I shouldn't use other examples, have the same chance to use this technology to become a better person and to speak out and to work and to do this kind of things. And so technology shouldn't be a divider, and it shouldn't be a divider between genders. It shouldn't be a divider between different social statuses and different regions and different areas. Also, there is a strong relation between cybersecurity and democratic integrity. Cybersecurity is there to safeguard our democracy, especially in this year in that we speak about elections. in half of the world. In my country, we have 4 rounds of elections, so it's a continuous process. This is why. I would give an example about not necessarily what Romania does, but Europe does in cybersecurity lately. Romania was bringing back to life a work stream on cybersecurity in election, and we are very happy that our European partners were joining this. So in 2 months, we managed to deliver a new and updated compendium on election, and I'm also very glad for our Sweden support. Sweden actually had 2 ladies join the group and supporting this. So this compendium is freely to download. I can share it to everybody. We also tackled a little bit hybrid threats subject, even if it's not a cyber subject, but we cannot put our heads in the sand and avoid it. But we did something else, and I think it's relevant also for democracy. We did a shortlist for politicians because cybersecurity is not easy to understand for everybody. But the people that are playing the election and joining the game, young especially, we need the young people to explain to older people what's going to happen in this world, from deepfake to, I don't know, all the media campaigns that you can do online. And I was impressed for the lovely lady in this morning speaking about it. So it's also, we shouldn't forget that the women have a voice, and their voice should be listened, and it should be listened online. And I would get to the third point, that is impact on gender equality on the progress of our society. You tackled it a little bit before. I would see it from a different angle. For me, for Romania especially, it's relevant to have enough girls studying STEM. If we don't have enough girls studying STEM, they wouldn't have enough girls doing technology. I can give you a number. This number looks good for us, so this is why I pick it, but it's really a relevant number. So we are on the list of countries studying how many girls study STEM, finish a STEM curricula, we are around 45%, so close to 50. The Europe average is around 30-ish, but there are countries in Europe, all Europe, that are under that. So we want 50. We are getting closer, but the next question that we should ask ourselves, I don't have the statistic for the whole world. I can imagine it looks kind of similar in other countries, but I think we also should ask ourselves how many of these girls will work in STEM-related issues after and don't sneak into HR and, I don't know, administrative things and so on, because we know that they have the knowledge and they have the capacity to do STEM, so why shouldn't they do STEM? And when I was quite little, I'm in love with mathematics, so I was, in my country it was normal, okay, there were less girls than boys, but not, okay, maybe a third. First time I was outside of my country, a young student, I got in the room, there were only boys, and I was the only girl. And they explained for me for 3 months that the psychology has courses in a different building, and I'm blonde and young, and I'm kind of stupid, and I don't understand that I'm in the wrong room. I said, no, I'm not in the wrong room. You are in the wrong room. And said, wait, but you're young and beautiful. Why do you study math? It's so complicated. I said, because I love it. And because till now, nobody told me I couldn't. So it's about social norms. In my country, my grandmother worked, my mother worked. So for me, it was normal to study what I like, and nobody told me I couldn't. So I think that's one of the social norms that we should forget. We shouldn't tell girls that they couldn't. And we also shouldn't teach girls to play only with dolls. Sorry. Now they have also construction games that do flowers. It's nice, but still I prefer robots. Anyway, this is, okay, you see I write a lot of things, and we also speak about the technology as the role of democracy. It's a technology role in democracy. And when the internet came out, we believed that there will be a global village and everybody will be friend to everybody and so on and so forth. Coming from the cyber perspective, it was a time of positive trust. Now in cyber, we are in the time of zero trust, and we're slowly moving to the time of negative trust. This is a reality. So technology can give us digital tools for civil engagement, but we need to use them with attention, and we need to equip boys and girls with the knowledge to use them in the right way. And again, I can underline the young generation has so many advantages to my generation. So use it, because it's your world, your digital native. And I think one of the things that we have to do is to future-proof the democracy. Integrating gender perspective, but I was listening to you, and I want to underline what we want for women, be it in our countries or in your countries. It's not given forever. It can go away fast. It's a continuous battle. We had this year, as a Romanian example, we had a study asking the ladies what women want in Romania in 2024. It was done before the election because we wanted to prove that we need more ladies in politics. That was the point. So the question is, what women want? Okay, young women want education, nothing surprisingly. Older women, want health and paychecks and work. They all face financial problems or health problems or work problems, so nothing new. But there is a question set that was done 20 years ago and asked, in 20 years, the number of women in politics in my country raised. We even have a women prime minister. But asking the perception about the ladies in politics didn't change. It didn't even get better. At some points, it got worse. Okay, 1 point or 2, but it's not getting better. And it makes it surprising. But just do a test. I do it with my colleagues in the women organization. I said, make a list. On the left said, I heard good things about the lady. On the right, I had bad things about the lady. And put some ladies that work in politics on this list. Surprisingly, you'll see that you put more ladies on the bad list because the media is killing a lady much more than a boy or a man. So I think one of the things that we need to learn as women is to speak about our colleagues. And I want to use this opportunity, first of all, to praise Manuela. She is my colleague. She has the same name with me. It's Emma Bercha. You know her. She was leading the Women, Peace and Security conference in Bucharest last year. She did a great job. She's a colonel in the Romanian army. She invented the gender management office, and she's amazing. And I also want to praise an organization. It's called Women for Cyber Europe. In 2019, when we came up with this idea to do a group of women for cyber, we were, I think, in a room, maybe 20. And we are looking to each other and say, hey, we need to be more. We know that there are more ladies there, but we have to find them. And now we are, I think, around 5,000-ish. And we have an organization in every country in Europe, and we have a chapter, and we have many, many, many actions. And it started for a decision that we have to say that there are ladies in cyber, because yes, usually you are the only lady in the room and you're the only civil lady in the room. That's always sometimes the case. But there are a lot of ladies in cyber. Getting back to your question about technology facilitating gender violence, it's not a nice subject, because till now we have a nice subject. It's not a nice subject. We have sextation, we have image-based abuse, we have doxing, we have cyberbullying, we have so many names, I don't even know them all. And so many people intimidate and silence women online. Not only politicians. You heard the politician story before, but it's also young ladies, many, many young ladies. If you ask them, over 50% they were harassed online at some point in their life. We need to change the legal framework. I believe in zero tolerance, and I know some countries have done a lot in this direction. I think that what we can do is education and awareness. It won't happen from today or tomorrow, but it will happen. And I will give you an example that we just started 2 weeks ago with the Ministry of Education, where a man said we need that in schools. And what we do is kind of exotic for, I don't know, cyber and this type of cyberspace. It's teaching that through art. It's nothing spectacular, but you know, in this type of cyberbullying and these things, it's like in cyberspace, we need collaboration. We cannot defend our cyberspace if you don't collaborate with each other. It's the same in schools. You cannot defend our kids if they don't collaborate, students, teachers, society, community. And art is a great binder. They do theater, they do paintings, they do a lot of things. I especially love the theater events because they present something and the kids debate it, and it's such a good idea to do it. And it's an analog solution to a digital problem. Yeah, there are also analog solutions to digital problems. I will end, because I spoke so much, with some lines for you, because so many young ladies, you say engaging man in this. I say be aware of the man that push forwards ladies just not to be overshadowed. And they choose specifically saying, I'm promoting girls, but please not the smartest one in the room because she's overshadowing me. So in politics, I learned the hard way. I was still doing politics at some point. Young ladies and young boys, nobody will give you the position. No matter what we say, fight for it. You have your place, but you have to take it. You have the courage to get engaged, to participate, you have the meaning of technology that the older generation don't have. You know how to use it. It's just your place. Take it. It's for you there to be and to be engaged and to build your future. Don't expect your parents or your grandparents to do that. Last thing that they can do is they say it's nice to be in the room, but in politics you have to take your position. Nobody will give it for free. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Mrs. Maria, for a very inspiring message. And I strongly agree that your emphasis on the importance of the equal access to the technology and also the empowering young woman in a STEM field as a young professional. And personally, as a young woman who working in the South Korean politics, and I also strongly agree to how much it's important to highlight the woman's presence and representation in our field. So yeah, thank you so much. And last but not least, my last question goes for Mr. God bless Emmanuel. So I learned that one of the recommendations of the gender cohort is to engage and build the capacity of men and boys to become strategic allies and advocate for the gender equality by challenging discriminatory practices and attitudes and behaviors in the society. So as a young leader of the Ready to Lead Africa, so what are the initiatives that you are spearheading to empower young men as agents and advocate for the gender equality and democracy in order to safeguard democracy for the future generations?
Thank you so much. I wanted to say I would just use the podium and just tell a few stories. Might just be better for me to do so. And I'll try to be brief. Okay, thank you, everybody. Good morning. I think was it in the morning? Yeah, I think so. Good morning. My name is God Bless Otubure, and I'm the global president of Ready to Lead Africa. I find it very interesting, and I find it as an honor to be selected amongst men, to sit amongst great women. My story is not different from most people in this world, but I think my story is unique. Because sometime in 2008, as a student in the university, I ran for office to serve as the public relations officer of the student union government.
And at the end of that election, for the first time in history, a woman won to become the first president of the student union government in my university. My first opportunity to serve, I served with a woman as my boss. And after that, I started working in the civil society space. And I served with a woman as my boss. She was not just my boss, but she taught me what I know today. She guided me through how to manage projects, how to deliver results, how it is important to work. Don't be liked, but be productive. Not by a man, but by a woman. And when I left that job, I started consulting. Again, my first client was a woman. Now, my story is incomplete without women. So I'll tell you another story. My dad left us when we were young, and my mom showed up. She didn't quit. She didn't give up on us. She said, "You must go to school." She showed up at every village council meeting, at every town hall. She represented our family. She made sure we were in school. Not by a man again, but by a woman. And over time, my life has seen the awesomeness of the power of what women can do. In 2019, I got selected as a Mandela Washington Fellow by the US State Department. And once you come back from that fellowship, you become part of a community of young leaders from across Africa. And in Nigeria, I ran again to be vice president of that association. And guess who was my boss again? A woman. The first ever female president of the Mandela Washington Fellowship was vice presidented, if there's a word like that, by me. So, when I got the invitation to speak on this panel, Gender Equality as a Prerequisite for Democracy, for future generations, I couldn't say no, because I'm not just interested in the research of the topic, but I'm a living proof that without a woman, without women, there cannot be progress in society. So, I'll tell you another brief story. There are two families. One, so conservative, and they don't want to see their women work. They don't believe that women have the capacity to contribute. So what happens? The man is the breadwinner. He alone can work. He alone must go out. So what's the woman's role? She has to be at home, take care of the kids, cook, clean the house, But guess what happened? Tragedy struck, just like it happens with life. The man loses his job, becomes depressed, couldn't handle it, kicks the bucket. Now the children are left with a woman without skill, without the capacity to lead and raise a family, without any means of earning. Penury calls, poverty strikes. But there's another family. The man works, the woman works, they have kids, they're both raising the kids, they contribute. Tragedy struck, but they're together. They're able to stand side by side. And what happened? They recovered faster. Poverty came and they kicked it out. Tragedy came, they kicked it out. What does it tell us, men? For those of us in this room, for those that will watch this clip tomorrow. What does it tell us? What it means is that our parochial thinking, the stereotypes that we've always held about women, it's not true. Women are not commodities. Women are equal partners in this world. Because a lot of us would not have been here without women. So if you say gender equality and democracy for future generations, it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. And so when they ask me, oh, what is Ready to Lead Africa doing as part of what we do to promote women participation in democracy, I'll be pleased to share with this room and with IDEA International that our response to this question is our current initiative called She Can Serve. She Can Serve is an initiative of Ready to Lead Africa, driven by technology and the connection of 3 generations. In my country today, Nigeria, women representation in leadership, especially political leadership, is at a dismal low. But I've always said to my staff and all my colleagues and the people who work on our vision together that we cannot give up on this conversation of women empowerment and women inclusion in politics. But we must do it differently. And how best do we do that other than create an initiative that gives women the idea and the capacity to serve? So what we're doing with She Can Serve is that we're working with secondary school students, university level students, or tertiary institution level students, and career level women, connecting them through technology such that you have the baby boomers generation, you have the Gen X and millennials, and then you have Gen Zs and Gen Alpha all in one community. They're able to connect. So the Gen Alpha, the Gen Zs are able to ask their closest counterpart, which are millennials, how are they coping with issues in life? And they're able to say, okay, you know what? If I don't have the answer, I'm going to go to my baby boomers and ask, how did you cope with this? So you have 3 generations brought together by technology and what we do offline. That is what we are doing at Ready to Lead Africa. That is what we believe. Would not just talk about what we can do, but what we are doing. So, do you want a society that is prosperous? Do you want a society that makes progress? Do you want a society or a world where we're not sitting here and talking about, oh, women, we're talking about violence against women? No. If you want that world, then it is on us to not just talk about these issues, but to believe and act in that understanding that she can serve. So as men, as boys, your role is not to use your masculine nature to oppress a woman. No. Because you have been empowered to empower other people. You have been empowered to raise other people. So the women in our lives, the people who God has created, and they share this earth with us, they're not liabilities. No. They're smart, they can contribute, and they can make things happen. Look at this, just look at this table. I'm the only man. Look at 4 amazing women. So if you're looking for inspiration, I knew there was a woman called Angela Merkel who led Germany very well. Oh, there's a woman right now who is the DG of the World Trade Organization. Her name is Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. She's doing amazingly good. Oh, you don't know that there are other women around the world who are leading global institutions and delivering results. So we're not begging guys. Hey, guys, I'm talking to all of us. They're not begging us. It is in our best interest to protect the interest of women, because when women win, the world wins. Because when women succeed, the world succeeds. Because when women win, then democracy flourishes and survives. So I'm joining IDEA International. I'm joining the Summit for Democracy, and I'm calling on all men. Whatever cultures, whatever traditions you thought you had, let me bust your bubble. Culture and traditions are peer pressure from dead people. Break yourself free from it. Because the idea of life is that progress is not gender sensitive. Result does not respect gender. It is about the capacity to deliver results. And I know that if my story, from when I started my journey of leadership, I have been privileged to serve with women all through my journey, and I'm still here. It's a proof that women are actually not what most of us think. They're actually more powerful, superior than a lot of us believe. So do you want democracy to survive? Can I get your answer? Do you want democracy to survive? Yes. Do you believe in democracy? Yes. Do you want it to go further? Yes. Then everybody say with me, I believe in women. I believe in women. Come on, you guys don't believe in women? Say, I believe in women. And we will support women for democracy for future generations. Thank you, and God bless you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Goffler, for your very strong and engaging message. Yeah, I also believe in women. And this is a very, this is a very important point that gender equality is not only women's thing, but it's requires the collective efforts from our, and it's ultimately linked to the future for a more inclusive future for all and a democratic future. All right, thank you, everyone. And I think I guess we have 27 minutes left. Yeah, right? Yeah, okay, so. Perfect. So following our panelists, we would like to open the floor for a open discussion and Q&A session to the floor. So this will be a chance for participants to interact with our panelists, sharing your own insights, experience, and ideas, or discussing the initiatives and successful practice from your countries to sustain and enhance the gender cohort recommendations. So anyone would like to share your experience, insight, or have a question, please feel free to raise your hands. Yes, please.
Thank you. First of all, thank you very much. It's very inspiring to listen to you. And what I understand when I listen to the stories is that social norms are so global, and the stories are very similar in different countries. I come from Georgia myself, and what you are telling, it's happening in a very similar way in our country. First of all, what I want to say is that it's important to have women in STEM and girls in STEM, but I think what's more important is to have them on the managerial positions, especially when we're talking about TFGB, we not having women ruling the tech shows how insecure the online spaces are and how unsafe they are. My question that I ask myself every day, and I'm asking you, you might not have an answer on this, but you might have some examples of the practices, is I know that we want to involve more boys and men in fighting TFGBV, fighting the gender-based violence, because this is a threat for the democracy. But my question is one, how do we involve boys and men who are not believing in what we are believing? I mean, it's easy to involve men like you who believe that women have equal rights. But more importantly, we need to involve men who don't believe so, right? So we don't circle in the same bubble. So this is my first question. And then my second question is, if we involve them, how do we create safety, right? I mean, of course, we can have separate meetings for girls and boys and men and women, but that does not solve the problem. So if we bring them together and we know that they don't believe in this equality, how do we create safety for women and girls who are at the moment our main target audience? Thank you.
Maybe yes. I cannot underline what you said. We need women in managerial position, but in order to get there, they need to get into the field. So we need women in STEM for cybersecurity. I'm coming from an agency that is in charge with the whole Romanian civil cyberspace. I'm the second one in position. I have a man in the first position, but that doesn't matter. That it's important to have ladies there. I'm in the management team. It's not always being the first one in the management team. It's important to be part of the management team and have boys and girls, men and women. And how we involve boys, I'll give you an easy answer, but it's we grow them. I mean, the old men that don't like it, they will eventually get out of the pictures. If we grow the right boys, like him, I mean, if each and every one of us have mentored young ladies and young boys, if we do the right job, at least for each and every one of us, the things are going in better. On the other side, I strongly believe, for example, what we do with theater and art and play, creating safe space where they can learn about each other, express each other, discuss the problems in a playful way, in a way that is not having the burden of being like the norm. Because this type of being out of the normal space like theater, it's bringing you out of this norm. So it's a way. I don't know it. I'm not sure it's the best way. It's just a way. But getting back, we should grow the right boys and the right girls, and it's up to the women. The women grow the kids. Last time, in most of the societies, I think the mother have a huge impact on the children. So we grow the boys.
I just want to pick on the point about how do we engage those men who are probably resisting and maybe not wanting to, to be progressive. The thing is, we are dealing with deeply entrenched social behaviors and practices, and there's definitely no one-size-fits-all answer. But I also believe some of our dialogues really have to be unpacking the fears. What is it that causes, that pushback? Maybe it's fear that they will be, not be so-called respected as men. So there are those genuine fears that perpetuate, the pushback. And some of it also has a lot to do with what we see on a day-to-day basis, even perpetuated in traditional medias. I mean, where I come from, most people are still watching TV. They're still reading, maybe the newspaper, especially those who are from the BBC era, which I call the born before computers. The born before computers, the BBC era, we're still looking at TV, and I'm always wondering why, for instance, even governments still allow companies to, to disseminate information like TV adverts of the business of choosing a washing powder. For me, it rings a bell. Why should that be an advert of a woman or a young girl so excited that they've managed to identify the right washing powder? I see it on TV currently, and I'm like, why is that? Or even a vacuum cleaner, damsuka, like we call it in Sweden. Why is it that men are not the ones who are being shown on those adverts, being super excited that they've discovered this magical washing powder?
It's complicated to wash the clothes.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's complicated, but it should not only be done by ladies. So men should also be seen to be interested in the washing powder, in the cooking oil. So there are many ways of channeling, transformation of mindsets. I come from a background of working with parliaments. You know, for years, women speakers of parliament would be called Honorable Speaker Say, because the men, everyone is so used to a man being the speaker of a national house, of a national assembly or a parliament. So when women started coming in and being members of parliaments and being speakers of parliaments, both, especially men, will just be calling them Honorable Speaker Say. And I remember the first, one of the speakers of South Africa, female speakers, she even said, I have not yet started growing a beard. Please, don't call me Speaker Say. So it's also the language, and we see it in education, we see it in various forms of communication. But I think there's need for dialogues to unpack those fears and the resistance, because it's real. And probably it's about feeling that when women come in and women are having equal opportunities, it's a zero-sum game. For men, they are being pushed out because it's about the redistribution of power and privileges. So there's a lot that needs to be done in that regard, in different spheres. Thanks.
You want to go? No, please. Okay. I mean, for me, I just think that what she has said is, for me, a take-home, and it's very important. To say that we still have adverts in Sweden, right? I'm just saying. Let's say we have adverts in Sweden. We have that in Nigeria, clearly, with the washing powder thing. Yeah. It's like standard practice, and how to make the resisting men change their mindset. For me, I think your example is very important, because we can use the media, right, to correct some of this thinking that men still have, that when the advert of cooking comes up, it's usually accentuated by a woman. And I know now that I think I've seen a few seasoning companies who are now smart enough to use both male and female characters in pushing the narrative about cooking and what have you. So I think that's a very big one for those of us who work with ad agencies. Those are things we can freely say to them, because everything is connected. Democracy is not an isolated reality. Democracy feeds off from what happens in society. So if the suggestion is saying, we're identifying these areas and I think we can change those stereotypes, I think it does make sense. Again, I said something while I was speaking, that tradition, culture, what have you, are just peer pressure from dead people. The reason I say that is I'm of the opinion, and I have a principle that I live by, that the culture and tradition that I hold dear is the one that guarantees continuous progress of the human mind. Anything, anything. And that is why, I'm very skeptical about what people say, oh, that's your culture. No, I said, no, were you here before? Somebody told you that's your culture. Right? It's like when it's prevalent in Africa, in some parts of Africa. It's like, oh, no, this is how our forefathers did it, right? But the question is, there was no microphone at some point in our human history. People spoke without the microphone. Today, if I start speaking and I take out this microphone, can you hear me very well? But with the microphone, it makes it easier for you, for me, for everybody, right? But imagine I say, oh no, my forefathers didn't have microphone. So that is how things, so So for me, yeah, talking to unbelieving men, we must bring them into today and not make yesterday look unbearable, so that they can approach the future with an open mindset. Because what people do is that if anything gives them a sense of control, whether it's bad or not, they hold on to it. For some of us, it took deliberate effort. And again, like I said, my story was not made up. My story is true. So I'm not waiting to be told what women can do. I am a living witness of the capacity of what women can do. So in terms of changing minds, by her suggestion, and I think we should, all of us here who are policymakers or who have access to ad agencies, we can begin to change that and connect that to democracy. So, I mean, that's what I'll say for now.
Thank you. So many interesting viewpoints. It's really, inspiring in so many ways. And I think I just wanted maybe to add one thing is there's been a lot of discussion, I think, around quotas. Whether it's good or bad, does it help, does it not help? I don't know. There is, of course, a lot of views one can have on that. But there is something with quotas that can actually be helpful, at least in an initial stage, because it would be, maybe it's a disadvantage to women. It's like they're going to tell you, oh, you just got that job because of the quotas. But the fact is that they're going to say that anyway, So it's like, oh, it should actually be based on capacity and knowledge. Yeah, but we are there, we have the capacity and knowledge, but we still don't get the job. So maybe then quotas actually could be helpful. So I think, I think it's good to have that discussion. I'm not saying it works everywhere and in all occasions, but I think it's an interesting way of getting in there to show both women and men that actually we can both do the job and we actually all benefit from being there together. So I think at least in an initial stage it could be helpful. And maybe also related to that, in Sweden, for example, we're quite famous for our parental leave, which is something we are very proud of, and we think actually it helps a lot when it comes to equality. But what happened was also that after a while we realized that it was only the mothers, so the women, that took maternity leave, and then at some point that became a disadvantage, right, in the labor market, because it was like, we don't really want to hire you because you're going to go on 1 year of parental leave, and then, where are you? So what then happened was that the regulation came that men or the other partner, it doesn't have to be the man, has to take a minimum of 3 months out of the 12. So what that did was that a lot of men who earlier probably wanted to be also with their kids, but that wasn't really accepted in the labor force, blah blah blah. All of a sudden they could say to their employer that, well, actually, if I don't take these months, we're gonna lose them. So sorry, I know this is really ridiculous and silly, and of course I would rather be here working, but I have to take care of the kids. So that sort of helped the poor men, I'd say. It's really bad luck for them that they cannot, that we don't have a culture where they can also be with their children, which is now actually changing then because of this regulation. And now, it's completely normal. It's completely natural. No one will question it. And, it's really something that both women and men have gained a lot from. And, of course, the children. It's quite good for them. I would say my boys were much happier being with my husband on parental leave than with me. So, it's really a win situation. And I think that's maybe, partly how do we put into practice, these things? Because we can talk about it forever and tell men, oh, you're losing out. But this is really a way of showing that it can make. So a little bit of regulation might actually not be too bad at some point. Thanks.
One? Due to time limit. Oh yeah. Do we have one more question? Due to the time limit, I think we can have one last question from the floor. If the audience has, please feel free to raise your hands. Yeah. So I think none. Or if the finalists, do you have short question, very short, brief question like to each other? That's fine. We have 10 minutes left. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. I think the silence means contentment, not boredom. Not that this is boring, but I believe people are concurring, and hopefully there are many takeaways from what we have shared. But I really want to pick up on one of the points that God bless mentioned, that democracy is not an isolated occurrence. Because sometimes we talk about these issues in from a very technical, kind of approach, whereby we do this for democracy, but at home we live like this. And then we want this that happens in the so-called domestic or private sphere. Ordinarily, it just has to influence what happens in the public sphere. So it's also about our, what can I say, orientation in terms of thinking that, someone once said there can be no democracy without those who are democratic. And at some point that the quality of the life, the quality of life of women is also a reflection of the quality of democracy. And I think these conversations that we are having truly show the interconnection of the issues, whether it's starting with access to STEM education and opportunities from there, what is happening in tech, what is happening at home in terms of even the toys that we give the boy child and the girl child, the information that they have in the school curriculum. When I grew up, I always thought that doctors were only men, because the books that we were using, the illustrations, the one with the white coat and that stethoscope was always a man. And the one who is a nurse with like a cape, in the BBC, Born Before Computers, they used to wear this cape. It was always a woman. So to see male nurses later on in life, I'm like, even a male gynecologist, I'm like, how does this happen? Because it all started from education. And talk about farming, you would be told, Mr. So-and-so is the farmer. The wife stays at home. Those were the illustrations and the narratives that I grew up in. So imagine we pass that on to the young men, to the young boys, to the young girls who become the young women and the women of today. As long as we fail to connect the issues, we end up with almost like ad hoc and disjointed interventions. And yet, everything is connected, because democracy is about the people, and for the people, and with the people. Thank you. Any last thoughts? Sorry.
I was always the first one, but
I'll go. A few last thoughts. I really picked up what you were saying about fear. I think that's really the key, and that fear is not only amongst men, of course, but I mean, the fear of change, I think, is something that we can, all relate to. And if you're going to give up, if you feel like you're going to give up of your privileges, as you mentioned, that is, of uncomfortable thought. So we need to understand that, I think, and that doesn't mean that we should give up, but I think it's good to just remember that it's a really bad place to be walking around having that fear. So what can we do to try and illustrate and show and insist that there is actually a lot to gain from sharing that power? It's not just a loose thing. So maybe that is what I would just like to underline. And then maybe just saying one more thing about this sort of the new generation, and we are now all on in different platforms and its technology. And I was really terrified when I noticed that my friend's young daughter was playing on her computer or her phone. So I asked her, can you show me what you're playing? And that whole game was about this girl, how she was going to dress, how she was going to look pretty, because otherwise she wouldn't get the different men that were standing in a circle. I mean, it was like insane. So talking about you need women into STEM, I mean, who are making these computer games for young girls? It was like I mean, it was just so awful. So there is a job for all you young people who can do computer games. Please change those things. Thanks.
Okay, I don't know. I know, yeah, I don't think it was working. It's not working. I mean, this is shocking, though, just to hear that. I mean, my final thoughts would be that we are all partners in this game of life or in this journey of life. And I believe in connected development. I believe that whatever happens here is connected to what is happening in the other room, in the other room, in the other rooms. And as a people, I believe that this conversation is timely. And I mean, I just want to give a form of encouragement. There will be men who will struggle with the process of change. It's fine. It's fine. Because what we're trying to unbundle is centuries-old practices, right? That if we could flip and change it, it would be great. But clearly, we're not able to just, to even do that. It might be too dangerous to just do that. So there will be resistance along the way. But of course, conversations like this, stories from every one of us here, and your story reinforces the fact that democracy is not a 100-meter dash. It is also not a marathon because it does not finish. Democracy is the way of life that we continue to work on. The baby boomers will do their part. The Gen X will come, do their part. Millennials will do their part. The BBC will do their part. Gen Zs will play their role. Gen Alpha will play their role. It will never finish because the arc of democracy continues to bend towards justice. And that justice is why we're having this conversation. The role of women in protecting future democracies. So my thought is, for the men, once you see the challenge, if we're scared of our privileges, whatever that is, it's fine. But make a commitment, one change at a time, and we'll be better off tomorrow. Thank you, and God bless you all.
I thank you, God bless. The reason I didn't want to start is because I always happens in discussion about the women, that the man speaks the last. And I don't want you, even if you are a very special man, to give this image that in this conversation about gender, the man has the last word. We have it together. I think it's a discussion about doing things together. We cannot do without each other. We are equal, but we are different. And I think in the age of artificial intelligence, we should find our humanity more, get back to what we are, be what we are, and find the way to work together in a different way that it was before. It's not necessarily fighting the tradition, but live into the progress. And the games like that, it's not the only one. We know some of them, we fight some of them. It's hard it's a different discussion in a different room with the tech companies, what they allow on their platforms, because there is a limit in democracy. If your freedom touches my freedom, then maybe we should have a discussion about it. So not every freedom is per se okay, but I think democracy is the only way, and it's not a marathon, as you said. It's a continuous battle sometimes. It's never a win forever, as I always remember, even for girls or for women. And we shouldn't live in fear. And we should try to understand the fears of the others. Women have fears, men have fears. We are human. All the humans have fears. We have to learn to overcome them together. So thanks a lot, and thanks for the amazing moderation that we did. I think we should praise her because we never applaud her. So she did a great job.
Feel so touched and motivated. So, thank you, everyone. As we conclude our session, I want to express my sincere gratitude and deep appreciation to our panelists for your valuable insight, and of course to you, our participants, for your attention and participation to discuss the way of advancing gender equality in the democracy for the future generations. So, moving forward from today's session, inspired to implement and advocate for the recommendation we discussed. So, thank you all for your joining us, and I look forward to continued collaboration and progress we can achieve together. Thank you.